Good evening. I'm Jeff Bennett. Amna Nawaz is away. On the NewsHour tonight, the already storm-battered Florida Gulf Coast braces for impact from Hurricane Milton. Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump continue their efforts to rally support with early voting already underway. And a woman taken hostage by Hamas during the October 7th attacks reflects on her traumatic experience and the prisoner swap that led to her release.
When I came back, I asked myself the same question like in Gaza. Why God sent me back?
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by
moving our economy for 160 years. BNSF, the engine that connects us.
the ongoing support of these individuals and institutions, and friends of the NewsHour, including Kathy and Paul Anderson, and Camilla and George Smith.
The John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, fostering informed and engaged communities. More at kf.org.
And with the ongoing support of these individuals and institutions. This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the NewsHour. Florida is racing to prepare for Hurricane Milton, a storm that could be one of the worst to ever hit the state. Milton rapidly intensified over unusually warm waters in the Gulf of Mexico. It's now a Category 5 storm and is expected to barrel into the Tampa Bay area late Wednesday, less than 2 weeks after Hurricane Helene hit the southeast. William Brangham starts our coverage.
Today, residents of western Florida filled cars with gas, stocked up on supplies, and loaded sandbags ahead of what could be a direct hit by a major hurricane.
Honestly, when this one is kind of one that we're like a little worried about just because of how it's coming and the way it's coming straight towards us. So we're just trying to brace out for much as we can.
As the day wore on, even stores nearly 100 miles inland began to run out of supplies. Governor Ron DeSantis implored Floridians to be ready for the worst case scenario.
We urge you to execute your plan now. Let's prepare for the worst and let's pray that we get a weakening and hope for the least amount of damage as possible, but we must be prepared for a major impact to the west coast of Florida.
Milton is expected to lash the Tampa Bay area by Thursday morning with a catastrophic storm surge of up to 15 feet, torrents of rain, and fierce winds. It would be the first major hurricane to directly hit the area in more than a century.
The number one message
Last night, Tampa's mayor, Jane Castor, gave a dire warning to those who have been ordered to evacuate.
I can say without any dramatization whatsoever, if you choose to stay in one of those evacuation areas, you're going to die.
Many seem to be listening. Cars clogged the main highways north and east as people fled the coast.
It's a matter of life and death based on that Perdway. It's a matter of life and death.
President Biden delivered a similar message today and announced that he's canceling a trip to Germany and Africa because of the storm.
I just don't think I can be out of the country at this time.
The White House also announced it will launch an account on the social media platform Reddit to keep people informed on disaster response and to combat misinformation. Many are facing another problem. There's still plenty of wreckage from Hurricane Helene, which badly damaged parts of the same area 2 weeks ago. Residents and authorities worry that debris could now become projectiles driven by Milton's high winds and rushing water.
It's really frustrating that the last hurricane came, the storm, and they've screwed around and haven't picked the debris up, and now they're scrambling to get it picked up. And if this one does hit, it's going to be flying missiles. Stuff's going to be floating, flying in the air.
Milton grazed Mexico today, mostly sparing the Yucatan Peninsula. But now it's Florida that is bracing for a direct hit, with potentially catastrophic damage coming here within the next 24 hours. Jeff?
William Brangham reporting tonight from Orlando. William, thank you. Now for the latest on this storm, we're joined by Michael Brennan, the director of the National Hurricane Center in Miami. Thanks for being with us. So what's the latest on this storm's path and its expected strength?
Well, Jeff, Milton has re-intensified now this afternoon to a powerful Category 5 hurricane. Maximum sustained winds are now back up to about 165 miles per hour as it moves east-northeastward across the southern Gulf of Mexico. But overall, the story in terms of the expected impacts, and there are going to be multiple life-threatening impacts across much of Florida, has not really changed. We're expecting the center of Milton to approach the west coast of the Florida Peninsula late tomorrow night, very early Thursday morning, bringing life-threatening storm surge inundation to much of the west coast of Florida. The expansive risk of hurricane-force winds across much of the central and northeastern parts of the state, and the potential for catastrophic and life-threatening flash flooding with up to isolated areas seeing as much as 18 inches of rain.
The potential for catastrophic storm surge, how high are you thinking right now?
Well, in this area here, if we zoom in and take a look at this area here from, say, Pinellas County, the Tampa Bay area, Hillsborough County, Manatee, down to Sarasota, somewhere in this purple area, we will expect to see 10 to 15 feet of inundation above ground level. So I'm 6 feet tall. That's water up to maybe 2.5 times taller than I am. And so this is really the potential for destructive, life-threatening storm surge. That's why people have been asked to leave the evacuation zones in these areas. And even if we go farther south along the coast of Florida, because Milton is going to be such a big hurricane, you even get down to places like Port Charlotte, Cape Coral, Fort Myers, we're looking for 8 to 12 feet of inundation, still well south of where the center crosses the coast.
Help us understand how this storm went from a damaging tropical storm to one of the strongest storms ever in the Atlantic.
Well, it found that perfect combination of very, very warm, deep ocean waters over the Gulf of Mexico, very favorable atmospheric conditions in terms of very moist air, no strong upper-level winds, the structure it was able to obtain and rapidly intensify, as we saw yesterday, getting to Category 5 strength, now coming back up to Category 5. But the main message for people in Florida is that while Milton's not expected to be a Category 5 hurricane, maybe not even a Category 4 at landfall, the storm's going to double in size. It's tropical storm and hurricane-force wind field is going to dramatically expand in the next 24 to 36 hours, and that's going to increase that risk for the dangerous storm surge. We have hurricane warnings in effect for everywhere you see in red here, the entire I-4 corridor, Orlando, Melbourne, Tampa, up to St. Augustine, pretty much the entire central portion of the state at risk from damaging hurricane-force winds.
So this is not a storm that people, especially in the Tampa area, should expect to be able to ride out.
Yeah, if you're in a storm surge evacuation zone, you should try to get out as soon as you can. Conditions are going to deteriorate on Wednesday. You could be cut off from evacuating. And you don't have to drive hundreds of miles to get to a safe location, just tens of miles out of those evacuation zones. Everybody else who lives inland in this hurricane warning area, you want to find a safe place to shelter in place, certainly by midday tomorrow, and be prepared to shelter in place through Wednesday night and well into Thursday.
Michael Brennan is the director of the National Hurricane Center, joining us tonight from Miami. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Let's shift our focus now to the greater Tampa area and what people are doing there to get ready. Democratic Congresswoman Kathy Castor represents Florida's 14th congressional district, which includes Tampa and St. Petersburg. Thank you for being with us. We appreciate it.
You bet.
As we just heard, Florida is bracing for a direct hit from this monster storm. What's your greatest concern right now, and how are federal, state, and local officials preparing?
Jeff, we have an impending catastrophe on our hands because less than 2 weeks ago, we were swamped by a historic storm surge from Hurricane Helene, a storm that was 100 miles off the coastline, but threw up so much water that it flooded out thousands of my neighbors across Pinellas County, Hillsborough County. Tampa and St. Petersburg, it's devastating. They have their whole lives out on the street corner, and we were in response mode, just trying to help them survive and get the assistance they need. And then here comes a monster Hurricane Milton that is just going to upend everything and have an even harsher impact.
Yeah. Well, more than 1 million people are under evacuation orders along Florida's west coast. There are reports of hours-long traffic jams, hotels at capacity, gas stations that have run out of fuel. What's the status of evacuations in your area? How is that process moving forward?
The only positive surrounding Hurricane Milton, we have a little bit of time. We've had a couple of days, and folks were heeding the evacuation orders. Many of them didn't have homes to stay in, so they took this evacuation very seriously. The roads today were not quite as clogged around town. People are scared. We've never had this kind of damage, and then this 1-2 punch. Milton is going to be a triple threat because it's not just the storm surge; it's a storm surge at even greater levels than Helene, then flash flooding because of enormous amounts of rain, and then the hurricane winds. And watching Milton intensify so rapidly out there is just put people out on the roads. But I have to tell you, there's still some folks that I've heard from today that said, well, you know what, I'm going to go to the second or third story and ride this out. And that is very misguided. They're likely going to lose their lives if they're in an evacuation zone and they try to stay.
You were chair of the Select Congressional Committee on the Climate Crisis, and this hurricane intensified faster than almost any on record, from a tropical storm to a Category 5 in less than 24 hours. What does that suggest about the threat that climate change poses, and what does it mean for the areas that you represent, these low-lying coastal areas?
Climate risks are growing. They're growing exponentially. Whether it's wildfires or extreme heat, longer, hotter summers. And here, in a very dramatic fashion, the rapidly intensifying hurricanes, because the Gulf of Mexico is incredibly warm. Down in the Keys, the waters were like a sauna practically, and that is jet fuel for these hurricanes. And people aren't used to that. They're used to maybe having a little bit of time and giving the forecasters the ability to tell them to get out of harm's way. But this is the new abnormal. And I'm very proud that we adopted a lot of climate pollution reduction policies in the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Law, but we have got to act urgently. We have got to do more. And let me say, the climate crisis isn't just about the weather, it's about your wallet. Insurance is exorbitant in Florida. Your electric bills now, because you have to run your air conditioner longer, they're out of sight. So this is impacting our way of life here and making it so expensive that folks will say, I can't afford to live in Florida any longer.
Democratic Congresswoman Kathy Castor, thanks for your time, and we're certainly wishing you the best, as well as all the people in the affected areas.
Thanks, we're going to need it.
And we start the day's other headlines with a legal challenge against TikTok and its impact on the mental health of children. 13 states and the District of Columbia filed lawsuits today alleging that the short-form video app's algorithm is intentionally addictive. The suits argue that certain design features like tailored content, push notifications, and endless scrolling exploit young users by keeping them on the app for hours. Today, New York's Attorney General said it's causing profound psychological harm to young people.
We wanted to protect children. It's as simple as that. Because nationwide, children and teens are struggling with significantly high rates of depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideation, and other mental health issues, largely because of social media.
The states are seeking new financial penalties against the company. TikTok called the claims inaccurate and misleading, pointing to its safety features like screen time limits for minors. President Biden is pushing the nation's water utilities to replace lead pipes across the country within 10 years. The plan announced today comes a decade after the water crisis in Flint, Michigan, renewed concerns about the dangers of lead in tap water. Lead is a neurotoxin that can cause health defects, including brain damage. Children are especially at risk. The president made the announcement at a rally in Milwaukee today. The city has the 5th highest number of lead pipes in the U.S.
What's the government for if it cannot protect the public health? And in the process, we're creating jobs. We're building a better America. And clean water is just one critical part.
The new rule is the strongest such measure in roughly 3 decades. The EPA says the effort will prevent up to 1,500 premature deaths a year. The UK spy chief issued a stark warning today about a rise in assassination attempts by Russia and Iran. MI5 Director General Ken McCullum said his agents and police have stopped 20 Iran-backed plots since 2022. And he warned that increased violence between Iran and Israel could lead to more Iranian state aggression in the UK. In a rare public speech, McCullum also said that Russian military intelligence, called GRU, is waging a campaign to, in his words, generate mayhem on British and European streets.
We've seen arson, sabotage, and more. Dangerous actions conducted with increasing recklessness, and having precisely the opposite effect of what the Russian state intends, in driving increased operational coordination with partners across Europe and beyond.
McCullum also warned of signs that the Islamic State group is attempting a comeback. He cited the deadly theater attack in Moscow earlier this year as a brutal demonstration of its capabilities. The Nobel Prize in Physics has been awarded to 2 pioneers of artificial intelligence, John Hopfield of Princeton University and Geoffrey Hinton, a University of Toronto professor known as the godfather of AI. In their announcement in Sweden today, the Nobel Committee credited Hopfield's work in creating a data processing model based on the functions of the human brain. Hinton built on that work to develop machines that learn by fine-tuning errors until they disappear. We spoke with Geoffrey Hinton last year, shortly after he left his post at Google, and he warned about the dangers surrounding the technology he helped create.
We should realize that we're probably going to get things more intelligent than us quite soon, and they will be wonderful. They'll be able to do all sorts of things very easily that we find very difficult. So there's huge positive potential in these things, but of course there's also huge negative possibilities. And I think we should put more or less equal resources into developing AI to make it much more powerful and into figuring out how to keep it under control and how to minimize bad side effects of it.
The Nobel announcements continue tomorrow with the Chemistry Prize. On Wall Street today, stocks rebounded from Monday's losing session. The Dow Jones Industrial Average added more than 100 points to close above 42,000. The Nasdaq jumped more than 250 points, or nearly 1.5%. The S&P 500 also ended higher on the day. And a passing of note, the baseball pitching great Luis Tiant has died. Born in Cuba, Tiant played for 6 different clubs over his 19-year career, winning 229 games along the way. But it was his 8 seasons in Boston that made El Tiante a star. Known for his unique wind-up and big personality, Tiant became the city's first Latino superstar. He was a 3-time All-Star and was inducted to the Red Sox Hall of Fame back in 1997. But Tiant fell short in his bid for Cooperstown. Luis Tiant was 83 years old. Still to come on the NewsHour, the U.S. Supreme Court takes up a case involving so-called ghost guns. We speak to Arizona Republicans about why they're considering voting Democratic in the upcoming election. And a musical endeavor uses natural environments to make recitals less formal and way more public.
This is the PBS NewsHour from the David M. Rubenstein Studio at WETA in Washington, and in the West from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University.
Election Day is now only 28 days away. Former President Donald Trump will campaign in Pennsylvania, Colorado, and Nevada by week's end. Vice President Kamala Harris is also barnstorming, not in battleground states necessarily, but in a media blitz on radio, podcasts, and on television. Lisa Desjardins has our report.
Vice President Kamala Harris campaigning this week in a flurry of media appearances, today joined the hosts of The View, a friendly interview, though not toward her opponent, former President Donald Trump.
Is a convicted felon, okay, a big-time loser.
I think people are exhausted.
Yeah.
And they're exhausted with the lies.
The daytime talk show, part of a purposeful outreach by Harris to specific audiences, including women and families. As part of that, today she unveiled a new proposal.
So what I am proposing is that basically what we will do is allow Medicare to cover in-home health care.
The idea would pay for in-home aides to help some on Medicare who need help with basic functions and whose families struggle to meet those needs. Medicare would pay for it all at lower incomes and with a cost share at higher ones. Some details are still coming, but Tricia Newman with independent health organization KFF says this is a massive unmet need.
You kind of know by talking to your friends and family members and colleagues that so many people are struggling to find a way to care for an aging parent or grandparent or spouse even. So this is going to touch the lives of a lot of families.
Trump's approach on Medicare so far has been general.
President Trump has talked about preserving Medicare. In the past, he has talked about helping families with these kinds of costs, but there really are no details in his proposals.
Harris was also asked on The View what she would do differently from President Biden.
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
You come in here, you went on The View this morning, you're going to the shows.
The vice president also reached out across the gender gap today, speaking with shock jock turned podcaster Howard Stern, who boasts an overwhelmingly male audience. Harris has been criticized for not doing more media interviews or holding a national press conference, including by Trump and Vance.
She can't answer any questions. She can't answer any questions.
She won't even sit for an interview with the American media.
But on 60 Minutes last night, she called out Trump for backing out of his interview with them.
If he is not going to give your viewers the ability to have a meaningful, thoughtful conversation, question and answer with you, then watch his rallies.
As for Trump, he is doing other interviews. He taped a town hall with Fox News that aired last night, in which he and host Laura Ingraham criticized Harris and President Biden for their hurricane response.
Biden said the response has been robust and well coordinated, Mr. President.
Yeah, well, nobody says that. He doesn't know
that's what President
He doesn't
Biden
know
said.
what robust is. He doesn't. Look, he should be there, and she should be there. She shouldn't be at fundraisers.
That prompted a quick fact check from Ingraham.
It should be, I would say, North Carolina is bad, is so bad. And
She was there today for 3 hours, I believe, Kamala Harris.
In a radio interview with Hugh Hewitt that aired yesterday, Trump misconstrued migrant crime numbers and raised the idea of bad genetics when talking about migrants, phrasing long associated with racism.
You know, now a murderer, I believe this, it's in their genes. And we got a lot of bad genes in our country right now.
The Trump campaign says his words were misconstrued. Both candidates are on the air. Harris joins Univision for a town hall on Thursday, and Trump will take flight heading out west to Kamala Harris's home state of California this weekend. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Lisa Desjardins.
This week, the U.S. Supreme Court kicked off a new term with a major case today focused on federal regulations of so-called ghost guns. Those are firearms that are assembled at home with a kit. They don't have traceable serial numbers, and they don't require background checks. The justices weighed whether the government can regulate ghost guns with the same standard as other firearms made by licensed manufacturers. Our U.S. Supreme Court analyst, Marcia Coyle, was in the courtroom today, and she joins us right now. It's great to see you, Marcia.
Good to see you, Jeff.
So today, the justices seemed focused on questions of government overreach. Help us understand how this matter of government power factored into the arguments today.
Well, first of all, this case is very similar to last term's bump stock case. If you recall, the Supreme Court basically threw out the ban on bump stocks because the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives claimed that bump stocks could be banned as machine guns. Both cases are statutory interpretation cases. They don't have anything to do with the Second Amendment or constitutional law. Both cases are also part of an ongoing theme at the Supreme Court, almost a mission to re-examine federal agency power, to see if agencies are overstepping. There is this belief among conservatives in business that the administrative state has gotten too big, too powerful. And in the arguments today, it factored in an interesting way. Justice Kagan had a comment where she talked about the Gun Control Act that's at stake in this case that defines and regulates firearms. She said, well, what if you have an old statute? Gun Control Act was enacted in 86 or 68, and a new problem, and Congress doesn't act, and the agency steps in. Is the agency doing what Congress should be doing and taking power from Congress? But Justice Jackson saw it another way. She said, you have an old statute, a new problem, Congress doesn't act, the Supreme Court steps in, and the Supreme Court is deciding what Congress delegated authority to the agency to do. So there is this debate going on as to how far the court should go. You know, is it taking power away from agencies for itself, or is it trying to reset the balance of power? The government's argument today seemed to resonate most with a majority of the justices. I think this case is different in one way as well from bump stocks.
In what way?
The court didn't like in the bump stock case that the Bureau had never regulated bump stocks as machine guns until the massacre that occurred with bump stock guns at Las Vegas. And the Trump administration at the time directed the Bureau to do something about bump stocks. So it was a real change, an abrupt change in policy. Whereas the government today, the Biden administration, argued that the rule that it enacted in or promulgated in 2022 was simply, not redefining, but defining, expanding on the definition of firearms in the 1968 Act, and that what they're doing with ghost guns really tracks what the Bureau has been doing for almost 50, maybe 50 more years. And that seemed to resonate with at least the majority of the justices.
Yeah, that's interesting. So let's look ahead to the rest of the term. There are some 40 cases and counting on the docket. Are there overarching themes beyond the one you mentioned about the re-examining of the administrative state?
Well, certainly guns. It seems like we're always going to have gun cases. Besides the ghost gun argument today, a really interesting case has come to the court involving Mexico. Mexico sued Smith & Wesson and some other gun makers, claiming that they have, through their distribution system, knowingly aided the trafficking of guns to drug cartels in Mexico. Now, Congress had enacted a law that gives a broad shield to gun makers from liability for criminal acts done with the guns that they manufacture. But there's one narrow little exception to that broad shield, and Mexico has tried to fit its lawsuit into that exception. Smith & Wesson lost in the lower court, came to the Supreme Court, and that's what's the issue is going to be. Can Mexico go forward with its lawsuit against Smith & Wesson? So guns, definitely. The power cases, the overarching theme, involves some really interesting cases this term. Vaping. There's the Food and Drug Administration would not approve marketing plans for e-cigarettes, flavored e-cigarettes, and the maker of those cigarettes has sued the Food and Drug Administration, claiming that it exceeded its authority in not approving the marketing. And then the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has been in a battle with the state of Texas over storage of nuclear waste away from reactors. Texas says, oh, NRC, you exceeded your authority. So those are very important cases, but all involve agency power. There's also a First Amendment case that's fascinating. The court has been dealing more and more with social media in different ways. This case involves a Texas law that requires verification of age in order to access online porn. The law was obviously enacted to protect minors. So that one also is going to be fascinating. And finally, the culture war. The Tennessee ban, like 24 other states have, on medical treatment for transgender minors.
Mm-hmm. And the court could also play a role in a potentially contested election.
Absolutely.
So we'll be watching for that.
And I think they left room for it, too, just in case.
That's right. Marcia Coyle, thanks so much. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, Jeff.
One year on from the Hamas attacks of last October 7th, the war, pain, anguish, and heartbreak continue on a daily basis. And the persistent memories of that day are no more acute than for those who survived both the attack and the subsequent kidnapping into Gaza. Sapir Cohen was on Kibbutz Nir Oz that day and held for nearly 2 months by Hamas. Nick Schifrin met with her recently, a woman transformed by appalling cruelty, but who is now finding her own voice.
On the morning of October the 7th, a tide of terror rolled into Kibbutz Nir Oz. They broadcast, kidnapped, and killed residents and entered this home, where Sapir Cohen and her boyfriend Sasha Trufanov were hiding in a bedroom. Cohen accepted her fate.
I didn't send a message to my parents. I didn't want to say something with the meaning of goodbye. So I decided just to say my prayer, and I'm saying that again and again and again, and finally I felt something deep inside of me. I felt peace.
As she was taken, she felt overwhelming terror and profound regret.
God, please, it can't be. It can't be. I never did something I never did something meaningful in my life. And that was my last wish. Just keep me alive and give me the chance to do something.
But first, she faced more terror. As she arrived in Gaza, a mob was waiting. That's her in blue.
I saw thousands of people in the street. Like, all the people came outside and they are all encouraged the terrorists, and they are all come to touch me and to beat me, and they beat me strong. So I need to put the hands on my head and I'll say, God, please save me. I don't want to die here.
Like other hostages, she was held for some time above ground in multiple houses. And then, as Israel intensified its campaign, Hamas moved her underground into its network of tunnels.
The smell, like garbage. In the tunnels, יש הרבה לחות.
There was a lot of moisture and mold, and a lot of lice and bed bugs. All day you're scratching your hands and your head. And also the mattress was full of mold. It was hard to sleep because of the stench.
One day in the tunnels, she met the October 7th mastermind and master of her fate, Yahya Sinwar.
They saw that I'm under 18, and they say, okay, so tomorrow you will release with her. And then the other hostages say, no, she's old, she's 30. And they say, okay, so you stay. Just when I came back, I saw this face on all the TV, and I'm saying, I know this ugly man.
Did you worry that they would hurt you?
Yes, of course.
Were you worried about being abused sexually?
Yes, I was worried, especially in the first place that I was, because we were with two young people, two young terrorists that watch us, and in some days they came and put the heads on our mattress. And when the owner of this house, an old man, he came, they just go.
And that's when she found a strength she didn't know she had and created light for her fellow hostages when everything felt dark.
I saw something that I called it miracle, they like to go and to scare us, to say many things about Israel, that they took all the land and that nobody wants us. But when they saw that we are a very strong group and they came to say the same things, but it doesn't work anymore, they just sit in the side. And then I realized what it means to be united, like how much you can be strong when you are united. I just say to myself that my last wish was to do something with meaning, and God gave me the chance.
And so the formerly shy 30-year-old found her voice.
And we need to do everything, but everything, to bring them home now.
And now speaks to audiences of thousands with a message of unity.
The terrorists say when all the Jewish are together like this, they are very, very strong.
She knows while Israel is united in grief, it's divided politically. And yet, when she speaks, all Israelis listen.
So when I came back, I asked myself the same question like in Gaza. Why God sent me back? And I decided that I have to tell my story.
That even in darkness, there can be light. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Nick Schifrin in Ramat Gan, Israel.
Arizona's 11 electoral college votes could be key to winning the presidential race next month. Our White House correspondent, Laura Barone Lopez, recently spent some time there. So, Laura, as you well know, President Biden won Arizona by just over 10,000 votes back in 2020. How's it looking now?
Jeff, this year polls show that Trump has a slight edge over Harris in the state. And so we traveled to Tempe, Arizona, just outside of Phoenix, to sit down with 4 lifelong Republicans to get their take on the presidential race, how they view Trump and the future of their party.
How many of you have voted for Donald Trump? How many of you voted for Donald Trump twice? And how many of you plan on supporting Donald Trump this November? None of you. How would you describe the Republican Party that you initially became a part of in one word?
Integrity.
Freedom.
Opportunity.
Free enterprise.
And how would you describe the Republican Party now?
Cowardly.
Lost.
Fearmonger.
Lawless.
73-year-old Kevin Winker is a retired pastor who voted for Donald Trump in 2016.
For me, character is a major issue. And because decisions in the presidency especially are made by the character of the president making them. Donald Trump does not know how to tell the truth. He deliberately lies, and then he lies about his lies.
Dan Barker, 71, is a former judge and member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He's never voted for Trump.
Well, 2016, during that campaign, he mocked, a disabled person, And for me, as a Christian, a person of faith, for somebody that actively mocks another person for a disability, that's just completely contrary to what I believe. The biggest deal is the rule of law and spreading the big lie, saying that our elections are rigged. I think that goes to the core of our democracy. If people lose faith in that, that's going to dramatically impact our democracy.
53-year-old Amanda Stewart Sprouse is a mother of 3 who voted for Trump in both 2016 and 2020.
Amanda, you voted for Trump twice, but you're not going to this year.
I look at his economic policy, and he's basically talking about a huge national sales tax without any kind of approval from Congress, and basically at his whim, And he's looking at anywhere from 20% up to 60% of tariffs. It's not even like he's talking like a Republican. He's talking command and control economy at this point. He's not even giving us a choice.
And Joel John, 45, voted for Trump in 2020, but feels he's no longer able to support the former president.
I've never voted for a Democratic presidential candidate ever. And then January 6th happened, and I was just livid. No matter all the arguments, pro-arguments for Donald Trump, January 6th tips the scales every single time for me, that we just cannot have a sitting president of the United States incite a violent attack on the Capitol like that, because he's upset that he lost the election.
All 4 of these lifelong Republicans voted for Nikki Haley for president in the Arizona Republican primary. They're the kind of Republicans Harris hopes will cross party lines, in some cases for the very first time.
Can you raise your hand for me if you're going to vote for Vice President Harris in November? Amanda, you didn't raise your hand.
I know that Trump isn't my choice, and I am still watching and waiting and very hopeful as Vice President Harris keeps moving to the center. And I could see myself voting for her. I definitely do, but I'm still going to remain uncommitted at this point.
For the other 3, the decision ultimately comes down to character and protecting the Constitution.
I think by and large, Kamala Harris is a decent person. We may disagree on some policy positions. I think she's going to protect the rule of law, follow our constitutional process. If she loses the election, she's not going to claim it was rigged. Republicans, we've always said, we support the police, back the blue. And 140 police officers were injured that day. And I'm just baffled that suddenly the police are the bad guy and the January 6th prisoners are the good guys and should be pardoned.
That means reconciling their personal faith with some of Harris's positions, like on abortion.
I, as a pastor, have to remember that our country is a democracy. We are not a theocracy. And my personal religious beliefs cannot be put on somebody else, even though I may consider what they're doing wrong. It has to be, again, by rule of law. And for Roe v. Wade was the law, and now to come along and say that the government has the right to tell you or you as a woman what you can do with your body, I have a problem with that.
But for Amanda, abortion is one of the issues where she aligns with Harris most.
One of the important parts of Roe was that it made it safe. It made it something that we could regulate as a medical procedure. We don't want to see women in tragic situations where they're still carrying a baby that's no longer even viable and being forced to carry that baby until natural labor occurs, because women have died that way. Women used to die that way.
And we will close the border. We will stop the invasion.
Trump's anti-immigrant message and recent lies that legal Haitian migrants in Springfield, Ohio, were eating cats and dogs has only made these Republicans question their party more.
What really troubles me about that is J.D. Vance came out and said, yes, it was a false story, but we have the right to make up false stories to try and get our point across. Do we want an administration that is based on that type of non-integrity? You tell a lie often enough, and it's not that people believe the lie, but they don't care about the truth anymore.
Hey, I'll be the first to say, do I think the border's been handled that great the last 3 years? No. Well, but there was a bipartisan bill that would have made a huge difference. Harris would enforce the law. We would get a law, and we wouldn't have a president that would try and divide us based upon where we came from.
Amanda, earlier you said that you aren't decided yet on Harris. What more do you need to hear from her to get you there?
I would like to hear more from her speaking about tax policy, and I'd like to hear more of how she's actually willing to compromise with Congress to give these policies passed that we desperately need, whether it's on immigration, whether it's on tax policy, whether it's cutting spending, whether it's giving more power and energy to the Ukrainians so that they can rally into Russia.
What is the deciding factor for you this November?
I want to be able to trust what I hear from the person who's going to be president. I don't want to hear lies. I don't want to hear exaggerations. I don't want to hear made-up stories.
Willingness to uphold the rule of law and not to be untruthful about the facts that govern and control our democracy.
I would like to see a leader who is able to compromise, who can work within divided government and actually lead by example and compromise like we all have to on a daily basis.
Probably the rule of law, like Dan said, someone who's going to follow our constitutional process, someone who's going to honor that. If Republicans win in 2024, but not in 2028, will Vance certify the election? Will he count the votes for the Democratic candidate that won, or will he not?
Amanda hopes there's a world where she can soon call the GOP home again.
I think we need to be grown-ups as Republicans and start looking a little bit long-term and a little bit more strategically. If Trump can't deliver us what we want on tax policy, but Harris can, potentially, with a Republican Senate, that's what we need to be voting for this time, so that we can take the presidency back in 28.
For Joel, Dan, and Kevin, a return appears more elusive, signaling a potential realignment of the country's political parties for years to come.
How would you describe what it feels like to be a lifelong Republican who can no longer vote for the Republican presidential candidate? Joel?
Unusual.
Pretty disgusted.
Brave.
Disappointed.
Traditional piano recitals can sometimes be intimidating for performers and audiences alike. Two California pianists have made it their mission to use outdoor spaces to make them less formal and more accessible. Special correspondent Mike Surrey reports from San Francisco on the crescendo of support for this approach, part of our Arts and Culture series, Canvas.
If you dare to place 12 concert grand pianos in different botanical garden settings and invite people to come play and hear whatever piano music inspires them, they will come. Hundreds of pianists from all music genres and thousands of piano music devotees have been descending on San Francisco's Botanical Garden for 10 days each September for these free-form, all-day piano recitals called Flower Piano.
So that whole kind of recital vibe is kind of subverted with what we're doing.
We don't have to go shh all the time. Yeah, it's just a much more comfortable, fun environment to share with friends.
Yeah, I'm going to shoot some screws on the front leg.
Dean Mermel and Mauro Fortissimo share a common love of the piano and a healthy disdain for indoor piano recitals confined to overly controlled environments.
Things in the concert hall, you know, people are kind of quiet and don't move and they're kind of stiff. I think this is a bit liberating to play outdoors.
Mauro Fortissimo is a transplanted Argentinian pianist, sculptor, and performance artist.
Easy.
He started this outdoor piano movement by clandestinely putting a piano on a bluff along the Northern California coast near his studio, so he and others could play in nature.
And to hear the waves crashing, the tide coming and going, and you play and you breathe along with that, it's quite an experience.
For an encore, he and Dean Mermel put 12 pianos out above the coastline the following year, this time with official permits, and even more pianists and spectators came.
Newspapers, TVs, radios, they all came and they became a big thing, and it gave me my 15 minutes of fame.
It also caught the attention of San Francisco city officials and art patrons looking to celebrate its Botanical Garden's 75th anniversary with something special and participatory.
The idea is just to invite anybody to play. So this is also a difference with a concert hall. This is audience participation in the sense that they come from 9 to 5. Anybody could sit at the piano and play.
From 12 to 3 during the day-long sessions, several of the pianos are reserved for professionals, like Hunter Nowak. he has been doing piano recitals in unique open spaces around the country. Most of the performances are more spontaneous. Joseph Torres took advantage of the setting and the moment to play before a public audience for the first time.
I was being pushed by my friends here who were telling me to play. That's the most difficult thing for me, is getting over the nerves playing in front of other people.
A lot of children and a lot of adults have never played in front of people before. The only place they've ever played is with their music teacher or in front of their girlfriend and their, or in my case, in front of my cat.
Pianist and composer Kennedy Verrett incorporated the Botanical Gardens elements in his original composition, celebrating the role nature can play in music.
So our purpose here is to highlight that and to also be in concert with not just ourselves, but with the birds, the sword ferns, and with these ancient relics.
So I know I'm in New Zealand, but I've got to get to Africa. So I hear some boogie woogie and some classical music.
Everyone gets lost trying to find the piano.
Stephanie Linder heads the gardens of Golden Gate Park, where Flower Piano has become its largest annual event.
We have 55 acres and 12 pianos, and they're tucked in all different nooks and crannies, but they find their way and the music sort of guides them.
This combination of the environment and the performing arts, how important is it for the people who come here?
Well, it's really important. I mean, we see public gardens as a public health strategy, and we know that being in places like this lowers your blood pressure, lowers your cortisol, stress hormones, activates your brain in ways that it normally doesn't work. And so music does the same thing. And you combine those things, it's pretty spectacular.
Take this improvisation by Harry White, a lifelong pianist and retired city gardener who stopped playing at home because of his progressing Alzheimer's. Along with his wife and caregiver, he was able to find and play all 12 pianos during this year's Flower Piano.
I've come across children so young here that they had to sit on a stack of their music books just to play, and they couldn't reach the pedals, of course. It's pretty mind-blowing to see that connection of music starting to happen at such a young age.
You know, as a kid, I went to conservatory for 5 years, and we didn't have a piano at home. And eventually, my parents bought a piano, and I remember seeing them coming down the street, pushing a piano with a few friends, so full of all of pride, and I was so happy. And I kind of knew then that, I could get along with the pianos the rest of my life.
Mauro's lifelong love affair with the piano includes salvaging discarded pianos he collects and restores for these outdoor events, otherwise destined for the dump and landfill.
I like to think the composers would like it because it lets people experience it in a new way, in a way that they can approach it with a sense of wonder, because what's that piano doing under this tree? You know, it's the kind of thing where it kind of short circuits your brain for a second and lets something else come in.
By taking a piano out of its comfort zone, these Flower Piano events are connecting piano music to more people each year in their comfort zone. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Mike Saray in San Francisco's Golden Gate Park.
Later this evening on PBS, the first episode of a 4-part series about a national high school competition about civics. Citizen Nation follows teenagers from across the country as they wrestle with profound social, economic, and political issues facing America. Along the way, teachers, including this one in Wyoming, help empower their students.
I tell my students all the time, this is the most important class you will ever take in your high school career, because you need to know your rights. You need to know if there's an issue, how to solve a problem. I think our world is headed in a really scary direction. And my generation has shown that they're not gonna solve it. But we can get the next generation too. I really like empowering kids. And I like fighting for the underdogs. So.
Citizen Nation airs tonight and the following 3 Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern on PBS. And that is the NewsHour for tonight. I'm Jeff Bennett. For all of us here at the PBS NewsHour, thanks for spending part of your evening with us.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by
Consumer Cellular. This is Sam. How may I help you? This is a pocket dial. Well, somebody's pocket. Thought I'd let you know that with Consumer Cellular, you get nationwide coverage with no contract. That's kind of our thing. Have a nice day.
It really matters when you have an opportunity to give back.
Being part of something that's bigger than myself, that's what brings me happiness.
Being able to integrate your professional career with some of these other things that are important to you, it's critical to be happy at the end of the day.
You know, this is our community too, and we want to participate and give back to it.
People want those opportunities to make an impact and a difference.
Carnegie Corporation of New York, working to reduce political polarization through philanthropic support for education, democracy, and peace. More information at carnegie.org. And with the ongoing support of these institutions. This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
You're watching PBS.